Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Hope you had a great weekend, sports fan. I hope you had enough time to get in everything over the course of the weekend, because I'll tell you what, coming into this Monday show, we are absolutely packed. Lots going on with the Winnipeg Jets, couple of preseason games out west on the weekend, couple of losses today, a number of cuts were made. We'll get to all of the Jets information in just a few minutes. And we'll also discuss the way the weekend kicked off. And that was with an absolute thrashing of the British Columbia Lions by your Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the class of the Canadian Football League. An absolute masterpiece out on the West Coast late on Friday night. If you stayed up for it, it was definitely worthwhile. Man, this team looks good. Exciting to talk about. I'm still buzzing from that game, to be honest with you. Oh, we got tons from the National Football League to get to, of course, and we'll do that a little bit later on in the program. Brady's return to New England last night, big Monday nighter this evening, as well as huge weekends for some other local teams, including the 2-0 Manitoba Bisons and the 2-0 Winnipeg Ice. Jeff Hamilton's going to join us a little bit later on in the program. We'll chop it up with Hammer on both the big win on the Bombers. He, of course, was in Vancouver covering for the Winnipeg Free Press, and we'll also get his thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets, as he'll be doing a ton of the Jets beat this year with the Winnipeg Free Press. And I do believe the Hammer heading out to California for one of the trips later on in October. But all of that coming up on the show. Before we do that, do want to give a big thank you to the people that make this happen every day. The family of sponsors for Winnipeg Sports Talk. And we've got a new one. Welcome aboard officially to our friends at Culligan Water. Yes, the Culligan man is on board with WST. A family owned for over 65 years, or celebrating 65 years here in Winnipeg and Northwest Ontario. We are so happy to have Culligan on board. We'll tell you a little bit more about them later on. Of course, also Manitoba Battery, our friends at Royal Sports, Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, our friends at Canadian Club, the Nick and Nikki DQ Group, and of course, Cool Bet Canada. And we will hit the Cool Bet lines a little bit later on. I hope you were rolling with me going into the weekend. It was a awesome weekend. The Lock Shop boys for our Circa picks were 4-0 against the spread. We need the Chargers tonight. So yeah, good vibes heading into a Monday on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Let's get Remis in here to get things going. Remo, how are you, my friend? How was the weekend?
Great. Great weekend. We already have a couple of people commenting in chat that you look a bit brighter today. It was new equipment day for Winnipeg Sports Talk on Saturday. We did put in new lighting for you and a new microphone as well. So there it is.
We got the mic arm. The CTO came over.
Yeah.
Hooked up the new studio. We got the lights going on now, slowly but surely becoming more and more of a professional operation, one small item at a time. But yeah, no, you did an awesome job with this. We got some lights going on now, which will certainly help throughout the winter when it's dark all the time around here.
Yes.
And the best thing, I'll just pull the curtain back for a moment here, folks. And this will mean less for folks that are listening on the podcast. But if you ever saw on the YouTube channel, we had the big, silver Yeti mic. I actually had that on a stack of books and magazines right in front of me, which essentially made my keyboard useless. And if you ever saw me leaning over and doing weird things, it was probably because I was trying to get something up on my computer, but it wasn't readily available because of our rather archaic setup for the microphone. So anyways, the CTO got it done, came over, and you know what, Remo, we may as well get to this. I know everyone wants to talk about the latest on the Jets, and we've got the Jets cuts. But you came over on Sunday early in the afternoon, and I was still buzzing from that Bomber game the night before. And not because of what I was doing on Friday night, just the way the Bombers absolutely destroyed the British Columbia Lions. And I really did think that this was a huge test for Winnipeg. We saw the way that the line had moved all the way from 3.5 down to 1 at one point. I do believe it closed at 2.5, which almost looks laughable right now when you think about what transpired in that football game. I mean, if any people thought that there was going to be a bit of a let up for the Bombers coming off the bye week, there certainly wasn't. And this team is playing at a championship level right now. And it's hard right now. I mean, we joked after week 1, we did the power poll that it was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and everyone else. That still is as true today as it was then. The Bombers are the class of the league, and you have to work pretty hard to figure out who that number 2 team is, because right now it doesn't seem that there's a lot of teams that are very close to what the Blue and Gold are doing right now.
Yeah, I was talking with some friends where I said, bet the Bombers -1. I think this is a value bet. They're like, is it a lock? I don't know if it's a lock. I thought BC was pretty good, but I think they just beat up on Ottawa a couple times and made their numbers look good. They hadn't, first of all, they hadn't played a defense like the Bombers because there isn't a defense in the league. You saw early on how hard this team can hit. Brandon Alexander setting the tone very early, injuring who was the leading receiver in the league for yardage, and Lucky Whitehead looking to get revenge. I felt bad for Lucky going out very early in that game, but I mean the hard hitting, you saw it. Steve Richardson coming back, that guy is enormous, and I would not want to hit by him.
The
Six sacks. Yeah, I mean, Mike Riley was in a bad position. The BC can't run the ball at all. At least they weren't able to on Friday. And it's amazing to me, Huss. I mean, I was watching the broadcast, and whoever was doing the game, Rod Black, I forget who he was doing it with, but he was just like, oh yeah, they got Brandon Alexander, best safety in the league. I'm like, well, how many best player in the league did the Bombers have on defense? I mean, Willie Jefferson, Jackson Jeffcoat, Adam Bighill. I mean, the number of best player in the league at their position the Bombers have on defense is incredible. And again, limiting the number of touchdowns. And the offense, the defense, not a surprise. The offense, to me, it wasn't a surprise because we've seen them have good games, but Zach Collaros hadn't thrown for 300 yards all season. And there he was putting up, 407 against the Lions defense that has been very solid all year. And Kenny Lawler, now the league's leading receiver in yardage.
Two bills. Remember when everyone was laughing when Kenny Lawler, going into, I believe it was the Toronto game where ironically they lost, said that this team doesn't just think that they can be great. And speaking specifically about the offense, we think that we can be one of the best of all time. And people sort of side-eyed that. They looked like it on, the 104-yard drive at the end of the second quarter that put the Bombers up, I believe 17-3, was perfection. I mean, Zach Collaros is playing at such a high level right now that, you have things like, here's a stat for you. Kenny Lawler had more receiving yards than I believe the British Columbia Lions had total offense. Certainly had more receiving yards than Mike Riley had for the entire game. And the rushing totals, BC finished with 16 yards rushing, and I believe 4 yards rushing from running backs. So, you nailed it. We can single out individuals and Willie J and Jeff Coat and obviously what Adam Bighill's doing, having a monster season, and Alexander. But, it is this Bomber defensive unit. We were comparing them before to the 2011 defense that was so dominant that in a lot of ways dragged a pretty impotent offense to the Grey Cup before losing to the BC Lions. I think this defense is better. And then when you compare the offense this year with Collaros running at the rate that he is right now, there's no comparison. And something I'll ask Jeff Hamilton, but I'd love to hear from people in the chat. And if you're listening on the podcast, hit us up on Twitter when you're listening to it at Sports Talk WPG on Twitter. Just how good can this team be? What are we comparing it to? I had a number of people hit me up on the weekend that said, this is the best Bomber team since 2001. And the 2001 team was an absolute powerhouse. But of course, we remember what happened at the end of the season. Rested some guys, literally went 3 weeks without playing. And then, came up small against Marcus Crandell and the 8-10 Calgary Stampeders in the big game. But this team is so complete, top to bottom. And we mentioned what the Bombers did on offense, and certainly the defensive performance was absolute elite, holding a team like the British Columbia Lions at home to under 10 points, another single-digit start, which just doesn't happen very often in the Canadian Football League. But the special teams got a boost. It was nice to see Janaire and Grant back there. But the one thing that people had been nervous about, Remo, was the kicking game. And Ali Mortada, a perfect night, 3 for 3 for field goals, 3 for 3 for extra points. Now, the field goals were not very long at all. I believe the first one was a 13-yarder, and he had a 23-yarder and a 29-yarder. But it actually worked out quite well. I mean, he got to go and have about the easiest field goal that you'll ever get that one through, get a little bit of confidence, keep on moving back. The bottom line, he kicked the football 6 times. It went through all 6 times. So all in all, I mean, about as great of a team performance by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as you will see. And the message has been sent to the Canadian Football League. Catch us if you can. This is the bar for performance right now in the Canadian Football League, and it's right here in Winnipeg. And I, for one, cannot wait to get back to IG Field for that game against Edmonton on Friday night.
Yeah, Friday night. I don't know if you've seen the promos. I saw an ad on Facebook, which you can't see right now because it's down. But apparently it's 90s night on Friday, so dress in your best 90s gear for Bombers Elks on Friday. I'll be there. I know you'll be there as well, but
it might be 80s night, to be honest with you. You want to talk about the Bombers, because that's when this team was a borderline dynasty. Can we say that? I guess they didn't win back-to-back, but they did have the 3 championships. 80s, 90s night, it's always fun to do. But this team right now, we're going to be comparing them. I really do feel at the end of this season, if they finish the job and repeat as Grey Cup champions, Reem, the conversation about this team, this organization, many of the players completely changes from the team that finally ended the drought and got them over the hump to a team that did that, proved that they're champions, and are now playing at a level both from a talent perspective with the job that Kyle Walters has done, with the coaching job that Mike O'Shea has done, seemingly putting his players in the places to succeed and getting the absolute most out of them. And from a player standpoint, with guys that have the opportunity, if they can continue to do what they've done in the first half of the season through the second half and into the playoffs, that will become Blue Bomber legends. And it's extra cool, and we've talked about this before, to have this sort of a group of people, so many of them local. Talk about Andrew Harris. I mean, Nick Dembski is a star in this league right now. Brady Oliveira will be, and a number of other guys that have sort of, been adopted by the city of Winnipeg and in a lot of ways made it home. And Adam Bighill's right up at the start of that list. So not many things to nitpick right now about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Just wait, get ready. And if you don't have it already, get your tickets for Friday night, because this is a juggernaut. They certainly deserve our support. And if there were people that were waiting to see what this team's like, I don't think you need to wait any longer. This team is the real deal, and they'll look to go 8-1 against the Elks on Friday night.
Oh, yeah, that's a big game. And you look at around the league, I mean, the Bombers are 7-1. And what's the flaw on the Bombers? What's the question mark? And I don't know if there is one. If Alan Mortada can continue to go, perfect kicking. And we'll have to see. I mean, I know he was in a dome. I know they weren't the longest kicks. But, I mean, the Bombers they're not relying on the kicking game here to win. So, I mean, he did his job. He was perfect. That's all you can ask him. We'll see what happens Friday. But you look at around the league, and, I mean, the Bombers, they're way better than every other team. Saskatchewan, I got questions on Fajardo. Huss, I don't know about him.
Saskatchewan couldn't score a touchdown against the Bombers in 2 games.
Exactly. They could, and that too. Okay, BC they just beat, and BC, I think their numbers are inflated. They've beaten up on Ottawa a couple of times. Calgary,
the Bombers didn't just beat BC, dude.
Yeah,
they emasculated them.
They
went into their house, beat the hell out of them in every aspect of the football game, to the point where it was a white flag at the end of the fourth quarter. I mean, you saw Brian Burnham all upset.
So mad.
I mean, hey, you know what? You got your asses kicked. It's over. There was absolutely nothing to be gained, and you can play for pride in the last minute. But I think Rick Campbell's realizing that, the more time that you play, the more chances, the more plays that are run, the more chances that something bad could happen. And it had been all bad for the BC Lions last night. Can you imagine if something had happened in that final minute where a player got blown up or hurt, trying to just, put lipstick on a pig and make the final score look a little bit better? I mean, I sort of get it, but that was a tough night at the office. Now, you're just not saying, this isn't over. I tweeted this after the game on Friday night. No one wins the Grey Cup after 8 games. I mean, there's still a lot of work left to be done for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But, man, when you look at this team right now, compare them to the rest of the league, and look at the way they are beating the so-called best other teams in the league, pretty hard not to be very bullish on the team's chances of, continuing the residency of one Grey Cup right here in Southern Manitoba.
Yeah, I know fantasy owners upset that with Brian Burnham that they took a knee. And speaking of fantasy, I want to give a shout out to Sean McGuire, vulturing Andrew Harris yet again at the goal line as an Andrew Harris fantasy owner. I thought maybe he's got one. Somehow Harris has one rushing touchdown or one touchdown at all this year. I thought he was going to put it in, but then they get to the one and give it to McGuire. I'm like, come on, it's a 1 yarder. Like, can't you snap it to Harris? Direct?
I checked this out to make sure that I was right.
Yeah.
Sean McGuire leads the Canadian Football League in touchdowns.
Yeah, that's insane.
He's the touchdown leader. He has 15 carries on the season.
For 14 yards or what?
For like 21 yards, I think. He's got like a 1.3 yard carry, and he's got 7 touchdowns. And he leads the league right now. And I mean, I don't know if there was a line beforehand for offensive touchdown scoring. We went through a bunch of the props at the beginning of the season. But I guarantee you, Sean McGuire was not on that list. So the fact that he is leading the league in touchdowns just goes to show the riches that the Bombers have and what they're doing. They're keeping on doing it, and it is absolutely working. Just one quick thing before we transition over to the Jets. We will talk more Bombers and Jets with Jeff Hamilton when he joins us a little later on. Zach Collaros, with his 400-yard performance on the weekend, and Mike Riley being held under 200 yards. Guess who the passing leader is in the Canadian Football League through 8 games? That's right, Zach Collaros. And Remis, I vividly remember a conversation we had on this program and I had with Dustin Nielsen on the Lock Shop when we were looking at the odds for the upcoming CFL season. And it was if everyone that was creating these odds was thinking that the Bombers were still the same team as they were last year, with very limited quarterbacking passing ability, but we're going to be this running juggernaut team. Zach Collaros was the biggest long shot of the starting CFL quarterbacks to be the passing leader for the year, 13-1. So shout out to everyone that got on that, because we're looking at a potential winning ticket in 6 more games. He's got about a 100-yard lead on Mike Riley. The biggest concern right now for Bomber fans, if you're a guy that has like a Collaros passing yards leader, is the fact that they might shut him down for a game or two towards the end of the season, because with Saskatchewan's loss on the weekend, Reem, the Bombers are 2 full games up on Saskatchewan and have the tiebreaker. I mean, it's realistic that in the next 2 or 3 weeks, the Bombers could essentially clinch the West, and they'll start selling tickets for that West final on, I believe, the 5th of December.
Yeah, I got to get my jacket ready for that one. It's gonna be chilly, but I'm here for it. And Zach Collaros, I mean, if there's any question, I don't think there was anymore, but I mean, this guy is among the best quarterbacks in the league. The offensive line, credit to them, they're giving him time to throw, but he is able to scramble, find open guys, and hit them. And Kenny Lawler, 202 yards or so, 12 catches. I mean, he's helping him out. I mean, all the receivers have been great as well. I mean, Darvin Adams, Rasheed Bailey, Nick Dembski, Drew Waldtarski, they're all helping him out, making plays, but I think one thing that's most apparent, I mean, the signature play of Zach Collaros' time with the Bombers was at the end of last year when he hit Darvin Adams in the corner. I think it was against Calgary at the end of the year.
That was the play.
But I mean, he does that all the time. Like you saw that, like, oh wow, what an amazing play! Well, that's such a fluke. But he really is able to find time for himself with his legs, and then use his arm. But he can rush, and I mean, as long as he's healthy, he's definitely up there with the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, he's better. I'll probably take him over just about everyone right now. I'm trying to think. I don't know about Masoli's coming back. I don't know about him, but I would probably take Collaros number 1. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, to me, the only guy that's in his area code right now is Riley.
Yeah.
And Riley, unfortunately, had a very tough night at the office going up against the best defense in the Canadian Football League. So everything coming up, Bombers. Friday night is the game against Edmonton. They'll look to go 8-1. And as Joey Panks just said in the chat, that 3 more wins would essentially clinch the West for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Oh, and I see Pick and Pigskin podcast. Justin Dunk says that Duke Williams has just signed with the Riders. That's a big addition for Saskatchewan if they can get him in there. And you got to feel for Naaman Roosevelt right now. Signs with the Bombers. And literally since he got here, the offense has been running so good, and all the receivers have stepped up the way they are. No one's gotten hurt. Still waiting for an opportunity to get in. But he's on the best team in the Canadian Football League, and probably some pretty good vibes right now around IG Field and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. All right, we were going to get to the Jets. Yeah. I did mention right off the top of the program that we have a new sponsor. That's right, the Culligan Man is on board with Winnipeg Sports Talk. We are so excited to have Culligan Water with us. And they have been the water experts in Winnipeg, family-owned for 65 years. And it's just great to have them on board. I think everyone knows water needs to be a big part of everyone's life. I'm feeling a lot better, actually, post-Ryder Cup. I've made a point to hydrate quite a bit, and it's helped me. If you have any water needs, essentially, both residential and commercial, Culligan Water has the hookup for you. Now, you can visit them over at 1200 Sargent. You can give them a call at 204-694-5180, and everything available with their services is over at drinkculligan.com. But listen, they've got water softeners and filters, whole home water systems, as well in drinking water systems, bottled water coolers, as well as bottle-free coolers, bottled water, of course, and water delivery services throughout the city of Winnipeg and Manitoba. And if you're listening to this as a business owner or somebody working in a spot that may need commercial or industrial needs, they've got water products and solutions for commercial and industrial as well. It's all there at Culligan Water. See them at drinkculligan.com. But pop down and see him, 1200 Sargent Avenue, or give him a call at 694-5180. Official WST welcome to Culligan Water. It is great to have the Culligan Man on board with Winnipeg Sports Talk. I also want to shout out Manitoba Battery. Donnie and the guys probably thought that it might be a little cooler right now. And of course, people getting ready for winter with the winter batteries for their cars. But I have a feeling they're probably doing a little bit more in that fall special with the maintainer. $20 keep your boat battery or your summer car battery juiced intermittently throughout the winter, so that when you turn it come spring, it is good to go. But the real focus over at Manitoba Battery is for the upcoming winter. Don't be that guy that waits till it's minus 35 and realizes, damn, my battery doesn't work. You can get the best price in town, and you can get it delivered to your home with our friends over at Manitoba Battery. They're at 1026 Logan, 204-783-8787, or look them up online at manitobabattery.com. And the sooner you do it, you'll have peace of mind when we start looking at those miserable forecasts a little later on and wondering, oh my God, is my car going to start? Donnie and the guys, Manitoba Battery, have your hookup. And tell you what, Royal Sports was busy on the weekend. I popped by there. I know everyone is ready for hockey season, minor hockey starting around the city and province. And Royal Sports has been, speaking of family-owned, 35 plus years in Winnipeg, starting on Raleigh, now at the Superstore at 750 Pembina Highway, along with King Skate, Snow and Surf. They are the hockey experts, with the hockey experts working for them, hockey players that'll get you fitted into the equipment that makes sense for you or the hockey player in your family, along with some great deals on tons of equipment, goalies as well. They've got it all. And for fans that might not be getting on the ice, Jet season is here. I did get a nice tweet from one of our listeners who, for their birthday, the family went over to Royal and got them the Kyle Connor reverse retro jersey. Some new players on the Jets, jerseys ready for that. And of course, we talked about that game on Friday night. If you're not going already, two things you should do: get a ticket and get over to Royal Sports first and get some of the great Blue Bomber gear they've got to rep the team as they look to go 8-1 coming up on Friday. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. And you can also find them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina. They'll give notices on the big tent sales. Might squeeze another one of those in before the snow flies. All right, Remo, let's get to the Jets. It was a busy weekend for the Winnipeg Jets, and I wasn't too sure what we were going to expect because, of course, it was 2 games on the road. We knew Connor Hellebuck was not going to be playing. Eric Comrie got a start against Edmonton on Saturday, had maybe a little bit more of a veteran lineup with players like Scheifele and Ehlers in. And then last night, a more younger lineup with a number of players trying to make one final push to remind the coaches that they're going to be great options, presumably at some point if need be. And, a 4-3 loss on Saturday night, coming back from a 3-1 deficit, a late goal coming from, I believe it was the News, off a nice pass by Leon Draisaitl, did him in. To me, the story about that game was the way that the big guys looked, especially Mark Scheifele. Josh Morrissey, I thought, had a really good game, and Declan Chisholm as well. Speaking of young guys sort of, getting noticed, we spent so much time talking about Ville Heinola and Dylan Sandberg, who's still injured. Guys like Johnny Kovacevic and Declan Chisholm, I thought, really acquitted themselves well over the course of this training camp, and Chisholm was a big, big part of getting the Winnipeg Jets back in that game. Alas, turnover, a big goal by Nuge won it for the Oilers. And then it was Mikhail Burden's time to start last night. And, he sort of got in his own way early on, fumbled the puck. I mean, he's a legendary handler of the puck. It didn't go so well in his first preseason start, but did get back on it, made 30 saves in the game in a 3-2 loss. So overall, I mean, I think a lot of the guys that were trying to, make a point, to make a statement to the coaches that they'll be in the mix for call-ups or in the future did that. But now with the cuts today, we're looking more and more like the roster that we're going to be seeing, probably playing at home against Calgary on Wednesday, and then in the final game on the weekend against Calgary before we start the season 9 days from today in Anaheim, California.
Yeah, we'll just bring up the cuts here on YouTube. I'll read them out for the people on the podcast. The Jets reassigned the following players today to the Manitoba Moose: Burden, Arvid Holm, the goalies, defensemen Declan Chisholm, Leon Gavanke, Simon Lundmark, Johnny Kovacevic, Jeff Malott, and Christian Reichel, who were on the score sheet yesterday in Vancouver. Additionally, these other three players will be assigned to the Moose pending waivers: Mikey Eismont, Luke Johnson, Austin Pogancy. A couple things, I guess, as far as defense goes, I know we've been talking about Johnny Kovacevic, how he's looked good, he's making an impact, but the Jets are pretty loaded at defense, and that's something we haven't been able to say the last couple of years, but bringing in Dylan and Schmidt, Logan Stanley's emergence, Ville Heinola, I just don't think that there's a spot for him. Dylan Sandberg maybe could have made a push, but I mean, it's pretty clear that these players were going to end up on the Moose now. Burden is one, and if you ask people in the chat, maybe you'd like to see him, but he's going to get a lot of work there with the Moose. So I think the biggest question for the Jets roster is at backup goalie, and I think that's a good problem to have, and a problem that if it persists is pretty easily fixable. So I have seen people like getting the magnifying glass out for every goal Carney let in on Saturday. Was it his fault? Was it the defense's fault? Should he have had that? But
that's going to continue.
It's going to the microscope on everyone. Yeah. So we'll wait and see. But I don't think there were any big surprises. And I'll just pull up what the Jets lines are looking like right now. But
just on Carney. I mean, he did say himself he needs to have that third goal on Saturday night, and it was one that just sort of got through him, and that's not going to cut it, in, the regular season of the National Hockey League. He did feel more comfortable and, made some solid saves, but, those are the ones, get him out in the preseason, as we said. And, I don't think at any point, I mean, I'd sort of speculated, a month or two ago but with the situation that we're going in, I mean, I think Eric Comrie is going to be the guy that's going to need to have a big preseason to really, establish himself, the confidence in him from everyone else in the squad. I'm not sure that that's really happened, and I guess we'll ask this to Hammer a little bit later on when he joins us. I don't believe that the team would really be considering, jumping on a guy that maybe is hitting the waiver wire over the course of the next week to come in and take that spot. Unless a guy they just thought there was no way that would be available was available for nothing, and they could bring him in and then presumably put Comrie on waivers and ostensibly sent him to it. But Comrie's going to get his chance. I think that's the team has been very, very clear. Paul Maurice said after the game as much. But as Remis, as you mentioned, I think when we get in, those starts there Comrie does make early on in the year when Connor Hellebuck's getting a night off, those early starts are going to be very important for Comrie. I think, not as much the fan base. I mean, fans will, will overreact to things and celebrate things maybe more than they should be when things go well. But certainly for the head coach, I mean, they know how important Laurent Brossoit was for the last couple of years. When you had one of the most elite goaltenders in the league, but they also needed Laurent Brossoit to play at the level he did for the last couple seasons. So, I mean, if Connor Hellebuyck is going to be sitting for 15 to 20 games this season, they're going to need NHL level goaltending. And I think the jury's out on Eric Comrie. But I know there's some people that are already saying go another direction. I think most people are willing to give him the opportunity. But that, to me, might be the biggest question mark we have going in. Because as we'll get to, there's been a lot of players fighting for spots in the bottom six, and particularly that fourth line that I think have acquitted themselves well enough to be in that top 12. But again, there's only 12 spots. So how that shakes over the next few days and these final two exhibition games will also be very interesting, as well as how Paul Maurice does the lines when the team gets back to skating tomorrow.
Yeah, here's what Scott Billick has as the remaining Jets line. Shout out to Scott Billick on Twitter for putting this together. But, I mean, as far as the Jets' backup goalie, again, we keep talking about it because I think that's the biggest question mark on what everyone else seems to be talking about. Look, if it doesn't work out, you can bring in another backup. The backup you're only going to need, as you said, 15 to 20 games. Hellebuyck probably playing 60 to 65. And I think if it doesn't work, after I saw someone say 10 games, I mean, they're going to only be playing like 15 to 20. So I would have to say a shorter leash than that. And I mean, I see people mentioning bringing Devan Dubnyk. I think he struggled before, but has had success, veteran goalie. I mean, we'll wait and see. As you said, there could be goalies going through waivers. I don't think it's as big of a concern as far as some people are making it out to be. As far as the Jets lines, I think stock up Svechnikov and Harkins. I think it's pretty safe. Riley Nash is on the team. Vesalainen had a nice game the other day. He seems to have started on that third line, but I don't know if he's more of a fourth line, and Harkins has passed him. Gustafsson keeps getting paired in these games with players who aren't close to the NHL, which would lead me to believe that he may not be in the opening day lineup. Toninatos look good. I don't know if there's a spot for him, and Cole Perfetti, maybe could be a candidate to start in game one, but we think that he's going to be in the Moose to start the season. That's what I think of the forwards. I'm not sure where you stand.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one guy that I think has done the most, and maybe he's been given the most opportunity, but he's certainly done a lot with it, is Svechnikov. And I mean, part of it was playing with Jansen Harkins. And I mean, I was at the game again when we were at the game against Edmonton. I mean, those guys were everywhere. And every time they were on the ice, it seemed that the puck was going behind one of the Oilers goaltenders. So I think Harkins is absolutely in that top 12. And when you think about, Maurice talked about playing your way up the chart, or playing your way up the ladder going into last night's game. It was pretty interesting to see. It was Kopp and Dubois, no Ehlers. So who got that role? It was Svechnikov. And that was particularly interesting because we do know that Svech and Dubois had some pretty good run together playing junior hockey in the Quebec League. So it's pretty apparent that Svechnikov has done a lot to impress the Winnipeg Jets, and most importantly, Paul Maurice. He's getting opportunities in some other areas, and I would absolutely imagine that whether it happens in the next week or potentially the first day or the second day of the season, that contract that he signed with the Moose will then turn into probably a two-way deal with the Winnipeg Jets. But the two-way deal doesn't matter if you're staying in the National Hockey League. And it's pretty hard to imagine from the camp that he's had right now and, where he was in the lineup last night and the success that he has had in his new spot, that Svechnikov won't be part of that opening 12 for the Winnipeg Jets. And maybe it takes till game 2 because of contract stuff. That's for smarter people than me as to how they're manipulating the cap and the LTIR. I think that's the big reason why he hasn't officially been signed yet. But Svech is going to be on this team, but barring something crazy going south on him right now, or just being a victim of numbers. When I say numbers, I don't mean numbers in the roster. I mean numbers with the cap. But he's done everything that's been asked of him and seemingly gets more and more opportunity. And that's exactly where you want to be as a young player trying to cut your teeth with a new organization.
And we were talking about this last week, and I agree. This has been, as far as the forwards go, the story of training camp. They brought this guy in, former first-round pick by Detroit, a team that hasn't had a lot of success. Like, how did the Jets end up with this guy? He's played well. He's showed up on the score sheet. He's scored what? He's gone hard to the net. He's played every game. He's gone up and down the lineup. It seems like this guy is on a track to make the team on a PTO. Trevor Lewis did it last year, but it does seem like you have to put Brian Little on LTIR to start the season, and then maybe you sign him. I'm not sure about all the contracts stuff. Again, that's for Larry Simmons and the Jets team, who's been very good at navigating these salary cap.
We need
waters.
a WST capologist.
Yeah, we'll figure it. But I agree. I think this guy has put himself in a very good spot here. And I mean, he is on a PTO, so with the contract, with the Moose, so you could send him down easily. But it seems like, this is a guy, again, he's got history. I think it was Ken Weeb said the Jets were interested in him back in 2015. So I don't know how. Again, it's amazing that this guy just fell into their lap and could be a solid contributor.
Yeah, we talked about that with Weaver last week before we got into the weekend. I mean, the thing that, and this went back to my conversation with Pat on 960 in Calgary when we were going through all the free agents that were still there. I mean, it was all dudes that were 35 and 36 and hoping to squeeze out one more year of their career. And then there's Svechnikov, a former first-round pick that was cut loose by Detroit, one of the worst teams in the league that you would think would absolutely have a spot for a young, talented player. So something doesn't add up. Bottom line is their loss is the Jets' gain right now. He has really impressed so far in training camp, and I think definitely looks to be a part. And I know James Robinson was mentioning, Reem, that with 4 open slots in the lineup, I've liked watching the preseason games and speculating on who gets in. And I think that was a big part of what this weekend was. Mark Scheifele's going to be there. Kyle Connor looks good. I mean, hopefully he's not getting them all out in the preseason. It starts slow, but he's looked great, finishing chances. But really, the guys that I think everyone has been watching the most closely are the guys on the bubble. The Svechnikov, the Nash, Riley, Jansen Harkins, David Gustafsson. And you mentioned Gustafsson. He's the one player that's interesting, and you kind of rolled out those lines. He's sort of been in that 5th line role. And many of us, myself included, thought that he might have the inside track on being that 4th line center because of how well he played last year, the time that he's already been with the Winnipeg Jets, and the fact that he was the Moose top player last season and how responsible he is defensively. But, if he's the extra forward, I think he's a guy that can push in, that can play in a number of different areas. Or if he's with the Manitoba Moose, he's a guy that, although I'll have to check on his waiver status, that could be an issue because I think Gustafsson would be a guy that, would have, might get
he's
an
on
ELC. He still is ELC. I wasn't sure whether he had an extra year. So anyways, that's great for the Winnipeg Jets. He's a guy that can go back up and down. And then for Gustafsson's perspective, you do want to be playing. And as much as, it's great to get that NHL paycheck and it's great to be on the private jets, it's probably more important for him at this point of his young career to be playing regularly. So if there isn't that spot right there, he'll be a phone call away and just down the hall. But overall, that's been interesting. And, we'll talk a lot about, how the top lines look, with Dubois, Ehlers, and Kopp right now. Stastny playing with Lowry. Going into Calgary, the Calgary game, who's going to be on that right side? Is it Vesalainen again, or is it Riley Nash, as we saw, I believe, in the Edmonton game? And who's in on that 4th line? I would imagine it'll be Harkins. It'll be Svechnikov. It could be Vesalainen. Harkins could be in the middle. I think that the big question is who goes with Lowry and Stastny affects that 4th line. And if Nash is moving to the wing to play with them, there's an open spot for potentially Harkins at center. If Nash is on that 4th line, I think he probably is the most likely center in the middle. But as we said, good problems to have for the Winnipeg Jets coming out of this, back at practice tomorrow with a much smaller group. And all of those individuals we just mentioned, Remo, pretty much destined for the Manitoba Moose, who officially opened up their training camp today. And I will tell you, I know there's lots of Moose regulars that are with us daily here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. This Moose team is going to be good. Certainly the talent that they've got here in Manitoba. Mark Morrison's coming into a great situation, taking over for Pascal Vincent with probably more legitimate borderline NHL talent playing in the American League than I think we've had since the team relocated back to Manitoba a few years back.
Yeah, and they had a solid squad last year, but they didn't play the playoffs, so it would have been nice to see what they could do. And I know see a lot of people talking about Cole Perfetti. I mean, if he's on the Moose, and we'll wait and see what other players from this are down. But yeah, the Moose looking to be very good. The Jets very good. We didn't touch on the defense us here because there really isn't much to touch on. Ville Heinola looked pretty good yesterday. Logan Stanley did leave the game with an injury, but by all accounts, Paul Maurice saying this is just super ultra precautionary, and it's like you get like a little scrape, and they're like, you know what, we're done. So I'm not so sure. I know Noje got banged up as well. Sandberg out long term, but I think the defense is pretty set based on health.
Hey, you know what? Speaking of that, we should have done this earlier, but we do have a clip of Paul Maurice sort of coming out of last night's game, talking about what we've just been chopping up. The guys battling for these spots on the roster and in the lineup. And of course, what Evgeny Svechnikov has been able to do so far this season, with a number of opportunities in the preseason, and sort of, as he said, moving up the lineup a little bit with an opportunity to play with Dubois and Kopp last night.
There's a bunch of those guys that have had good camps, and they're all not going to start the season with the Jets. But a bunch of them, I would say, accomplished probably what they could. They needed to get on the radar and be understood for the kind of player that they are. And then leave with that they go down and they play with the Moose and they're playing well and they're the best player. The coaches here know what to expect when they come up. So a few of those guys that maybe I didn't know, hadn't coached them or hadn't seen them in camp before, I got a little better handle on them.
I think like what Svechnikov did, playing on that top line essentially.
Yeah.
You've given him some good chances in this.
I've kind of moved him around and moved him up. I've liked his camp. I think he's got he doesn't mind going to the net, right? And he's got some hands on him and he makes some good plays, and I think he understands the game. So how he fits with other people will be a really important thing for him going forward. But he's had a good camp. He's done what he could do.
All right, so there is the coach on the battle for spots, as well as Evgeny Svechnikov, and I would certainly expect we'll see more of Svechnikov in the lineup Wednesday against the Calgary Flames. And then I think that final game will probably be very similar to the lineup we see in game one, although, and here's the thing, a lot of people are talking about Perfetti. Can he sneak onto the lineup at some point this year? Yes, I think that is absolutely in the mix. I don't think he'll play the majority of this first part of the season with the Winnipeg Jets. But game number one's interesting. Game number one, there's no Mark Scheifele. So is there an opportunity for Perfetti to get a chance to play in that game against the Anaheim Ducks? Maybe in a role higher than would be available if everyone was healthy or not suspended? Potentially. But I do think that when the Moose start the season, or at least a week in or so, I think Perfetti will be there on the top line, playing a ton, playing power play, along with some of these other young players that we've talked about challenging for spots. We're going to talk to Jeff Hamilton in a minute, but Remo, there was a bunch of other things that I did not want to skip over. Sometimes we get so into the Jets and into the Bombers that we kind of miss out on, a few things are sticking in the end, but some other local teams had big wins on the weekend. I want to start it off with the Bison men's football team. And I mentioned this going into the weekend. I mean, the entire Bison family and really the football community in Manitoba absolutely devastated at the sudden passing of Bison receivers coach Scott Nowjoks. He was, by all accounts, a huge part of Bison football. That family had gone through the Rifles program, and I know the Rifles had a crazy win on the weekend as well. You can check Bombing's Twitter account. I think DB was doing the play-by-play for that game. Apparently scored a touchdown on the final play of the game to win. So there was maybe, somebody certainly was looking down on both of our local teams outside of the Bombers this weekend, but the Rifles got a big win. But the Bisons beat Alberta 31-17 with those heavy hearts. And of course, two of Scott's brothers are on the team. They both made the trip. Brian Doby talked about that, bringing them both, although one of them was injured. But the story of the Bison win was third-year quarterback Jackson Tuchinski, a Vincent Massey product, who got his first start replacing Des Catelier, who was their fifth-year starter, who is apparently out long-term. So it looks like it'll be Tuchinski's game going forward. And he acquitted himself very well. But the star, Remo, was Gavin Cobb. 2 receiving touchdowns in the first half, 88 yards for the day. But really the play of the game, and really in a lot of ways a big reason why they were able to win and establish that big halftime lead, a 91-yard punt return that if you've seen the highlights of it, I mean, this guy just bends his body around, making guys miss. And when he's got some open space, he was absolutely gone. So a big, big win after a really, really trying week for everyone in that Bison program. And team looking pretty good at 2-0 after that win against the Golden Bears out in Edmonton.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at the highlights on their Twitter page, Bisons. 91 return, 3 TDs in the first half. So pretty incredible. And we'll be keeping an eye on the Bisons and the other Winnipeg teams as we go on. And I know another Winnipeg team, I see a couple people in chat were there. Jeff Kabilas.
Yes.
Tacos are sandwiches, who apparently has a first name. A guy messaged me. He's like, hey, I'm tacos or sandwiches. I won your contest. I'm like,
I won the tickets.
I'm like, I don't know. Can we put them? Well, leave them under tacos or sandwiches at the box office.
Tacos are sandwiches at hotmail.com. Just send the tickets there. No, listen, the ice beat down the Wheaties on the weekend. These two games were not close. And I'll be honest, I kind of, remember the incredible matchups that those teams had 2 years ago. And then last year was a weird year. I really didn't know where the Wheaties were going into this season. Sort of looks like they've got certainly some catching up to do as far as when they're going to be playing up against the ice. Because it was a resounding sweep to the season for the team from Winnipeg in the Battle of Manitoba in the Western Hockey League. Friday in Brandon, they won 10-2, outshooting the Wheaties 49-22. And then Saturday, back in here at the home opener that Kabilas and Tacos were at, 7-1 win, outshooting Brandon 39-18. And, the ice for their part, the scoring was really spread around. Owen Peterson's leading the team with 6 points. You got a number of players at 5 and then 4. Everyone got a little over the weekend. So you wonder whether this matchup will get a little closer as the season goes on. But obviously a rough start to the year for the Wheaties, but a hell of a start for the Winnipeg Ice. And we'll actually welcome in Kevin O tomorrow on the program. And Olszewski, not only, last year he was doing the games, sort of the studio host, but now what a tag team we've got, even if it is on a certain old station that we don't listen to very often. Turn it on for ice games and ice games only. Munsey doing it with Kevin O doing color. And man, they had a lot to talk about in those first couple of games. So great stuff with Brian and Kevin covering Winnipeg ice hockey, and we'll look forward to having some more people from the ice forward. But Kevin will come on tomorrow. We'll get KO's thoughts on the Jets, the Bombers, as well as the first weekend of Winnipeg ice hockey. All right. Hey, while we get to, just before we get to the Hammer and Jeff Hamilton, mentioned last week, we're incredibly happy to have Princess Auto on board with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We will be doing some regular weekly curling reports, as they're such a big supporter of curling in our community and in our province. And 2 of the top Princess Auto athletes, our good friend Reed Carruthers, who came on with us last week, as well as the legend herself, Jen Jones, were playing in the mixed event, a qualifier out in Red Deer. And they ended up going head-to-head against each other in the first round of the playoffs. And it was Jones and her husband, Brent Lang, beating Carruthers and Nagovin. Then Jones and Lang beat Lisa Weigel and John Epping to get to the semis. Ended up losing to a stacked powerhouse when it comes to mixed of Rachel Homan and John Morris, who ended up winning the entire event. So congratulations to Homan and Morris, and we'll look forward to we got to get Jen on at some point to talk about the upcoming Olympic qualifiers, both Team Mike McEwen, Team Jen Jones, and all of the Olympic hopefuls will be out in Saskatoon in late November to see who will represent Canada as our Olympic curling teams for the Beijing Olympics. And of course, Princess Auto, you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tours and equipment around, plus items from the new farm category. And they've got everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new at Princess Auto. You can visit them online or in-store today, 2 Winnipeg locations, or find out more at princessauto.com and make your ideas and dreams come to life. Shout out to Little Brown Jug as well. By the way, the Little Brown Jug patio, the tap room right now in the patio, a few extra days of amazing spots to have a few cold ones. I did enjoy a few 1919s on the weekend. a big celebration win over at my local after the Bombers won. But they've got a new beer. A new beer is coming out, and it is called the Double, D-U-B-E-L. The new brew in our limited edition series is here. The Double is a malt-forward Abbey-style ale with rich dark fruit flavors, fall vibes times 100. Double is available online at littlebrownjug.ca and in the tap room now. And don't forget that special on the summer variety pack on remaining stock. If you buy it at the tap room or online, you'll get a $5 gift card for your next Little Brown Jug purchase. And hey, it's Monday Night Football tonight. No better spot to watch the game. Big one. We'll get to the NFL after we talk to Jeff Hamilton, but your local Boston Pizza. The Schooners are waiting for you. The BP Wings, the pizzas, the big game on the big screen at any of the local Boston Pizzas. Man, I had so much fun hosting Monday Night Football all those years at Boston Pizza. We didn't start doing it this year, not knowing what the situation with COVID was, but I can tell you it's still the place to be, and we'll look forward to maybe getting a little Monday Night Football get-together at Boston Pizza some point soon. You can, of course, always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, hammer time on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Let's bring him in. Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Jeff doing a little double duty these days, covering both the Winnipeg Jets and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Joins us now. Hammer, what's good, man? How are you?
Oh, you just revealed all that's good. I get to cover 2 professional sports teams in the city. How can I complain? Get to be on shows like this, just another wicked day in my awesome life. You know how it goes, Huss.
You got it. Well, I'll tell you what, whether you're, I know you can't have a Big J journos, you can't be cheering for anything, can't have a piece of the story, but as someone that's covered football for a while that appreciates high-level performance, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are a fun team to cover right now. Everything going right, and we kind of laid it out for the first 15 minutes or so of the show, dude. That was as resounding a victory against a quality opponent. Maybe we're saying many of the same things we did after the Banjo Bowl and the Labor Day Classic, but this team is the class of the league, and they don't seem to be letting their foot off the gas. That was as complete a team win as I can remember.
Yeah, I completely agree, Huss. Just to address one of your earlier comments, I mean, I can objectively say that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are the class of the Canadian Football League. Doesn't matter whose allegiance, lies wherever. The Bombers are it. I mean, like you said, this game, I don't know if it was because we saw some pretty good football from the Lions. I mean, they did let that game escape them the previous week against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So, you think, okay, well, they almost beat the team that's closest to the Bombers in the standings. Had they won that game, they would have been the ones that were 5-2. So it just kind of created a little bit of an atmosphere, I guess, if you will, like this was going to be some crazy game. Well, despite the score, it's still being a 2-score game well into the fourth quarter. I mean, this game was never in doubt. I mean, there were moments during the game, particularly it was Kenny Lawler had a fumble, Andrew Harris had a fumble. You thought, okay, is this gonna be the tide that turns the game? Or, Michael Riley, if you will, had played great football. Was he going to take advantage of those things? And at the end of the day, it was just another tremendous effort from the defense, matched, I would say, finally with a tremendous effort from the offense. The offense has been good at points, but I don't know if we've seen them that good. And it ended up turning into Zach Collaros throwing for more than 400 yards for the 4th time in his career. Kenny Lawler eclipsing 200 receiving yards for the first time in his career, both putting them, league leaders in the CFL. Collaros obviously passing yards and Lawler receiving yards, and was just another beatdown. I mean, the Bombers are 7-1. I tweeted out during that game that seemed to get a lot of play from people on Twitter. Just there doesn't seem to be many good teams in the CFL, either, or the Bombers are just that much better than everybody else, whatever way you want to describe it. We haven't really seen that level of competition or any of the teams rise to that level of competition that we've seen from the Bombers. So, for people who are in Winnipeg that are so used to this kind of, whether it's a title or just kind of description, hovering around the Calgary Stampeders for the better part of the last decade. Well, welcome to your time, because, with the Grey Cup championship in 2019 and just what we've seen from Winnipeg this year, it just doesn't look like they're going to be slowing down. Injuries can happen, other things can happen, but this team, whether, who've also had to deal with their fair share of injuries, just seem dialed in every single week. And again, I just don't see it slowing down given what we see on the schedule coming up here.
Well, let's talk about that offensive performance, because it was one of the most impressive 60-minute offensive performances in a long time for the Bombers. And Zach Collaros was a big part of that. And Jeff, I mean, the anatomy of that 104, 105-yard drive at the end of the second quarter was such a dagger to the British Columbia Lions. I mean, first down after first down, some big plays, move the chains, Rashid Bailey in the end zone. I mean, it was clinical and it was like clockwork. And at that point, the Bombers, had a 2-touchdown lead, and you really felt like this was going to be their game. And in the big picture, I mean, Kenny Lawler had more receiving yards than I think BC had offense in the entire game. I joked early in the program that we all sort of had a little laugh when Kenny Lawler said earlier that he thought this could be the best offense of all time. It was sort of a side-eye, okay. Right. Tell you what, you have a few more games like that. Maybe we'll be talking about them with the all-time greats. Just an absolutely virtuoso performance by Collaros and Lawler. If he needed a coming out party, the rest of the CFL Friday night, coast to coast on TSN was it.
Absolutely. And everyone owns a piece of it, right? Offensive coordinator Buck Pierce called a great game. He's not abandoning the run. He's using the run when it, at the right times. He's getting runs from Andrew Harris. Brady Oliveira comes in with Harris out, and he catches a 13-yard pass and extends a drive. So, and it goes right down to the offensive line. I mean, we've given this group of 5 guys in front of the quarterback a lot of credit over the years. I think maybe we haven't given them as much credit this year, but I mean, they've just trucked along, done the same thing that they do game in, game out, week in, week out. And that's, create lanes for the runners, buy time for Zach Collaros, who we know, and we've said multiple times this year, just has this gamer mentality where he's not going to give up on a play until there's absolutely no opportunities, and I hate bringing Matt Nichols into the conversation every time we say it, but we were just far too used to, if the reads didn't work, Matt wasn't gonna scramble, and usually would throw the ball into the second deck of whatever stadium he was playing in. And whereas Collaros is a gamer, and that 417-yard performance just solidifies that title. And then right to the receivers. I mean, he's not getting those yards. He's not racking up those passing yards unless his receivers are making plays. And as much as his arm has been accurate, I'd argue that game in particular, there was so many tough catches made, whether it was Drew Wolitarsky, who I think finished with 68 something, but every one of those yards seemed like a tough catch. Nick Dembski, he got his 3rd straight game with a catch of at least 50 yards. So he's making, big plays at big moments in the game. And of course, Kenny Lawler has done, incredible work. Rashid Bailey got back into the end zone. I mean, it's just, everyone is just getting a piece of this pie, and you're seeing, this offense flourish. Also because the defense is playing well, they're able to get off the field, give them more opportunities. We often hear offensive coordinators and just players in general say, well, there'd be more rushes for more yards or more catches for more yards if they had the opportunity to be on the field. And so not only are they getting the opportunity to be on the field, they're executing when they're on it. So, I don't know if I'm going to go up to Lawler's suggestion that this offense is, CFL greatness per se, but I'm with you in the sense that if they can continue to catch fire, and down the stretch here, we might be talking about this offense in the ways that we're talking about this defense, and that we're comparing them to clubs not just in the recent past, but over decades. So, like I said, everything's coming up Bombers. It's got to be a great time to be a blue and gold fan for those out there for sure.
Yeah, and on the defensive side of the football, I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, Remis made a great point earlier in the show when he said, we've heard a lot of people saying Brandon Alexander is the best safety in the Canadian Football League. Right. And Willie Jefferson might be the best player, defensive player. And Adam Bighill's playing at an MODP.
Jackson Jeffcoat's better than Willie Jefferson.
Just about to say Jackson Jeffcoat. Yeah. I mean, I don't really even know where to start. But I think when you dig into the numbers of the defensive performance of the Bombers on Friday night, 170 whatever yards for Michael Riley, 16 rushing yards, only 4 rushing yards from running backs. 6 sacks, all by different players. Trying to single anyone out might be a waste of time, because this Bomber defensive unit, to be honest, I think right now is surpassing even the great 2011 team. And we will be, I'll tell you what, we probably already should be talking about this defense in relation to Michael Gray, Tyrone Jones, Greg Battle, and some of the greatest Bomber defenses that we've ever seen put together. They're certainly showing what they're doing every time out.
Well, I mean, I know, some fans out there, most of them not being in Winnipeg, will tell you to pump the brakes, games need to be played. All those things are true, right? There's still a handful of games to be played this season. There's still a handful of results to still be figured out. But we do bring up, even last game, I mean, you bring up the fact, like, how many of these guys potentially, like, if you talk about individual performances and racking up stats, whether it be sacks, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, interceptions, whatever it may be, how many of these guys on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to end up being all-stars at the end of the season? How many of these guys are going to be voted on by their peers? I mean, again, these are kind of things that media and fans like to talk about. I think the most impressive thing in there is that in the locker room, nobody cares. And I think, this is the big thing that, it has been talked about. It's not like it's been ignored, but, credit goes to Mike O'Shea for having, built this culture here where, it would be in what is a very difficult season circumstance wise with all, with COVID-19, obviously, and all the restrictions and protocols, easy to get frustrated. And that doesn't even add in the fact that, the drama that can come out of, as big of a locker room that exists in the CFL and professional sports in general. Like, I mean, there's so many things that could go wrong. And if you look at all the drama around the CFL, thank goodness, love drama in the CFL. It's the reason why I cover this league. There's just not a lot spilling out of Winnipeg. And so, you look at the composure with this team, you look at, winning obviously helps, it solidifies and cements some of the, the things that, Mike O'Shea asks of these guys. And let's be clear, Mike O'Shea is tough on these guys as far as expectations, but follow them. And, he's the leader that you want. So it's just a roundabout way of saying, it's a special season. It's full of individual performances. We're going to be talking, that's what we do. We talk about individual performance. We talk about particular guys, whether that's Collaros in the offense or Jefferson in the defense, but it really is just a collective effort. It seems like you could pick a different week, a different guy, and really zero in on what he did and be impressed. So, it is the sum of all parts, and that's what we're seeing with Winnipeg, even though we'll be looking at, probably counting on 2 hands on both sides of the ball who deserves awards come the end of the season.
No doubt about it. Hey, Steve Ross, I see you in the chat. Don't worry. We're going to get to some Jets topics with Jeff in just a second. Hey, and for everyone that's in here, do us a favor. If you could, hit that thumbs up button. Get us a few more likes. Those always help with the packed chat for a Monday show. Before we move off the defense, I did want to talk about the newcomer, Stove Richardson, who I've never seen this guy up close in person. But he's 5'10" and a half, 5'11", and 310 pounds.
5'10" and 3/8 is what he says exactly.
This young man absolutely abused former Bomber Suk Chung on Friday night. I mean, that sack when he went through Chung. I thought about this afterwards, talking with a friend about that play and then the game yesterday. What was Suk Chung thinking afterwards? He's like going, man, maybe I shouldn't have left Winnipeg after all. Certainly you're thinking that after going 60 minutes up against that defense. But, we talk about Willie. We talk about Jeff Coate. You have a guy in there on the nose built like that plays with that sort of power. I mean, I didn't think that the Bomber defense could get much better, but they looked exactly that on Friday night.
Yeah, and what did he wait? 2 plays to make his mark? I think that was the second play of the game. And it was like, and Suk Chung is like, I want to say self-proclaimed, like he walks around, everyone talks about him as being the nastiest guy, right? I mean, he was nasty when he was here. And for him to just kind of get pushed out of a way, I mean, by Stove, if you will, Steven Richardson, he's a guy that, you're right, he packs a lot of weight in a smallerish frame for defensive tackles, but that grounds him closer. He's an ability to get in and up under that shoulder pad, and we saw that with Suk Chung, and then he took care of the rest, right? So I mean, for him to make that immediate impact, for him to kind of say, if I could get a sack every game for the rest of the season, this will be a good season for me. Well, he's not waiting to rack up those stats. So, I mean, whether it's Steven Richardson coming back and bolstering what was already a pretty impressive defensive line, or Kyrie Wilson, who returned back into, the linebackers grew. Anyone that watched that Grey Cup in 2019 knows how dangerous he can be and how, present he can be in the game, making big plays. So it's just, it's just a rich, in this case, the rich get Richardson. And, I think it really is an opportunity for the Bombers to, what we've seen has been an opportunity for the Bombers was getting some of those guys in and seeing what they have behind guys like Kyrie Wilson and Steven Richardson, and they like what they see, to get those guys back and have them back in the mix and, doing exactly what they did before they were injured. I mean, again, just add it to the list of things that are coming up Bombers.
No doubt about it. Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press is with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. One more on the Bombers, and then we'll get to the Jets. It's pretty clear that the Bombers are the class of the league. We've run that out. Looking at the rest of the schedule, there's 6 games left. With Saskatchewan's loss, and by the way, Calgary, that's a season-saving win for them at 2-6. They probably were pretty much done. They're still in the mix right now if they can get some big divisional wins going forward. But at this point, with the tiebreaker, they've got 2 games on Saskatchewan, plus they've won the season series. So essentially, they're 3 games up right now. They could basically clinch the West in 3 games, like 11 games into a 14-game season. How do you think, how will that change anything for the Bombers? Or do you think they'll just continue doing what they do game in and game out, not wanting to change anything? Or as we get to the end of the season, will we see Zach Collaros and some of the other guys maybe taking some games off?
Well, it's a good question. Now, at least they'll have the option, right? And I'm there with you. I've written about it a couple times that in these next 3 weeks, by the end of the month, essentially, this team could be 10-1 and could potentially punch first place in the West, which was supposed to be this, massively competitive division and still is in some ways. But just, again, a testament to what the Bombers have been doing. Whether or not they can do that, and if they can do that, what will the last 3 games look like? We'll see. I mean, I've pulled my hair out at times watching this team where you see, a lead and the quarterback's still in and the running back's still in, and you ask them, why they want to play, and it's not even a conversation. I don't think they would take some kind of 3-week break, obviously. I think they would continue on, but it would give them enough time to, if something did happen, in those games, they probably would, they'd have at least time to figure it out, because you're not even factoring in the fact that if they do clinch the West, then they're hosting the West final. So they already have that bye in the first week of the playoffs. I could see them, hypothetically, maybe, if they get to that point, maybe resting guys in the final game. But I think for them, it's just more or less execution. Mike O'Shea doesn't think that way. That guys are going to get injured or things that are going to happen. Maybe he should a little bit more than he does, but he doesn't really do that. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But the Bombers are certainly in a good position. I mean, there's no reason why they can't beat Edmonton, who's, surpassed Ottawa is the worst team in the CFL, in my opinion, after losing to them for a second time on the weekend, and then BC at home. I mean, the Bombers have been world beaters at home. They've 15 the last 16 games, I believe, at IG Field they've won. There's no reason to think they can't beat BC. So when you look at those 3 games and you look at the possibilities, the idea of talking about it's interesting, but we might actually be meeting that by the end of this month.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I bring that up, I mean, there's been a lot of comparisons, excuse me, to the 2001 team that lost to the 8-10 Stampeders in the Grey Cup after being, I think, 14-4. Mm-hmm. That team finished with a bye. They rested their guys in the first and the last regular season game, and then had a bye. It essentially went almost a month without playing. Now, they beat Hamilton, but they weren't sharp at all in the Grey Cup game. And, many people bring that up when we were talking about it. So, I mean, but again, good problems to have for Mike O'Shea and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Jeff, let's move over to the other beat you've got right now, the Winnipeg Jets. And couple losses on the road to Edmonton and Vancouver in tight games over the course of the preseason. I know there'll be the general hand-wringing that happens each and every time our team takes the ice, win or lose, about what's going on. But overall, I mean, camp sort of played out, I think, the way that many of us thought that it would be. You pretty much know the guys that are established at the top of the lineup, and they're getting some chances to play more so in these last couple games, working through it. But what's really been interesting, we'll get to the goaltending in a minute, is the battle for spots on that fourth line, as well as alongside Adam Lowry in the position vacated by Mason Appleton. And, Jansen Harkins, huge camp. Svechnikov as well, and Svechnikov in particular, a unique contract situation, doesn't officially have a deal yet with the Winnipeg Jets for this year, but then you saw him last night elevated to play alongside Pierre-Luc Dubois and Andrew Kopp. Pretty clear that he's opened some eyes within the coaching staff, and I think it's very likely that he'll be in the mix when they drop the puck against the Ducks.
Yeah, that was the vibe. I mean, even before training camp started, just obviously given his, pedigree, if you will, a former first round pick, I believe 19th overall, has done some damage in the AHL. Shevchikov, obviously, I'm talking about here. He's just kind of as advertised. He's got that touch around the net. Now it's not crazy, obviously, but it's good enough for being in a bottom six role. But he also brings a toughness that I think the Jets covet, right? They want someone who can, finish around the net, but also be tough. I think what the exciting part for, this camp is that, the Jets didn't go out and grab guys that, the Trevor Lewises, those kind of guys that, are kind of expected to have a role, right? I mean, they're expected to kind of take that spot. And if you're going to beat them out, you got to beat out a veteran. And we all know, Paul Maurice joked about, I think he made, like he says, he doesn't read stuff, but he made the joke about how he's got, how people diss him for the way he treats younger players and whatever. They've set up the situation that there's going to be younger in-house guys. So that's the exciting part about this competition is you're really seeing a younger lineup. You're maybe seeing a different look to what we've certainly been used to here in Winnipeg when it comes to that fourth line. We'll have to wait and see as far as how effective that fourth line can be with ice time and whatnot. But, seeing guys like Shevchikov or seeing guys like Jansen Harkins, rebound from an up and down season last year where he struggled with injuries and getting in the lineup, to see those guys kind of front and center, making statements in these games. Now, I'm always one to kind of take it easy when it comes to preseason games just because of the competition. But that being said, if they're not doing anything against, quote unquote, lesser competition, then you'd have even bigger issues. So just the battles that are happening, the excitement, the youth, knowing that, some of these guys are within the system, others, like Shevchikov, who really wants to be here, really likes Winnipeg. He said that a number of different times so far since he's arrived. And just to kind of see that play out and like you said, play out the way that a lot of people envisioned or had hoped, is a good sign for this team, because we know where they are good, right? We know where they're, the top end of their forwards. Obviously, their defense is now, an asset this year compared to others, and of course, Connor Hellebuyck in net. So to see things working out in that bottom six, to let's just hope that when those decisions are made, that they fall in line with the kind of guys that, I don't want to say the kind of guys that fans necessarily adore or like, but just guys who have earned it and shown this preseason that they can that they can play at this level and want a piece and are hungry. So I feel that's the atmosphere we're getting in the bottom six, whereas compared to previous years, it's been more of like, okay, this guy, and this guy are slated in. Now maybe these three guys will be able to push them. I think we're getting a good competition, and we're seeing some of that stuff come through.
Let's have some fun and speculate for a moment, because we'll get the answers in a week or so. But I did find it interesting that Vesalainen started in the third line position along, once Kopp had moved up, and it was Stastny, Lowry, and Vesalainen for the better part of training camp. And then we saw Riley Nash get a turn there. We've also seen Nash playing center on the fourth line. If you had to guess, and maybe we'll talk game 2, because I have a feeling the loss of Scheifele could change things a little bit, potentially with Stastny moving up into the top 6, even if he's pegged to be playing alongside Lowry. Maybe, so just granted that there's all of it. But for game 2, with everyone healthy, is it Vesalainen or is it Nash, you think, that's the most likely person to be playing probably more minutes alongside Lowry than one would get even centering the fourth line?
It's a great question. And I mean, to suggest I have an answer that's going to pan out, I don't know. But I mean, what we do know is Christian Vesalainen has been given every opportunity to take that spot. I mean, he was penciled in prior to camp. He's a guy that we know has a good shot. We know that he can, he has some defensive responsibilities for him. This is a guy that, again, is given the opportunity, and what factors will go into it, what things they're looking for out of that position. I mean, I can't say I know for sure. I know what's worked with that line. It's usually been that defensive piece, but I think they're looking for a little bit more offense from them, right? It's great that those guys can go out there, but maybe is it too much to ask to get a little more offensive production? And so what does that bring? And Vesalainen seems to be that guy, but the problem is if you're trying to get his offense and you're not getting his defense, it kind of blows up that line. And then the other thing too is, whether or not Stastny stays on that line, if that's where he's penciled in, if that's whatever, Andrew Kopp could very well go back down there. So and I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. We'll see. We don't know if this is decisions being made strictly on the fact that Mark Scheifele will not be in game one. We also know that Paul Maurice loves to find out groups of two. He likes to find out guys that he can play with, and this just might be experimental. Again, I don't know who's going to end up in that spot, whether or not Andrew Kopp gets promoted to a top 6 role personally. I don't know if I would do that. I think Kopp brings that offensive punch to that third line, and if you can get whatever, if you can add Vesalainen to that group or whatever you want to do, that to me it's a key spot. But I have to give it to Vesalainen at this point, just based on maybe what they want out of it. But I just feel like that being a short leash. They clearly don't know. They clearly haven't decided. They probably have ideas, and that might be one of the last things we figure out before the puck drops for the regular season.
The funny thing that, to me, I got thinking up a little about it a little bit more after last night's game and seeing Svechnikov get an opportunity with Dubois and Kopp, knowing that Ehlers wasn't in the lineup. Mm-hmm. That if for some reason that clicks or Maurice feels like they can go there, then all of a sudden you've got a guy that was completely off the radar into the top 6. And that would theoretically allow both Kopp and Stastny to play with Lowry. And we certainly know that Paul Stastny's got all his tools in the toolbox. He can do things defensively. Certainly from an offensive standpoint, he can create as well. It's an interesting wrinkle that, again, I don't think a lot of people have thought about. And by no means am I suggesting that that's likely to happen. But we did know he's got the connection with Dubois from playing before. And for God's sakes, if there's one thing they need to do is find a group that works with Pierre-Luc Dubois and get the most out of the new number 80 in the lineup. And tell you what, if it's a guy that is on a PTO right now that can get it done, they can get that. They can do that.
You can tell by my smile from the moment you first started talking. I know they played junior together. That it's a great story. It's really if it does pan out, it'd be an unbelievable story. But let's be realistic here. You know what I mean? What they were able to do. I've watched the QMJHL, okay, and I've seen lots of guys be one-man shows and give cross-ice crease. Jonathan Drouin's a prime example. Nicky, those guys would take on and create chemistry no matter who was on their line. And I'm not trying to downplay that chemistry. I'm just not going to necessarily figure that this guy's the answer for Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I'm not suggesting you're necessarily
Ehlers is the answer. But they need a guy that works with those two guys.
Absolutely, yeah. So and that's obviously the ticket here, right? I think and I'm not here to make Pierre-Luc Dubois excuses. Obviously, last year did not go at all. He got a mulligan.
He got a mulligan for last year. Well, that's
the thing. He got a mulligan. For the amount of mulligans he had, he also had to answer. I don't know if there's ever been a player who's had to answer describe your game more than he did last year, because it just was every single game. It was so every time he got to the mic, it was so how do you think you've been playing? Imagine being asked that every single day. And kudos to him for not losing it, every once. So I wouldn't have blamed him to be whatever. I thought he handled it well. You can tell he's got some maturity to figure out. He is very, very hard on himself, and sometimes it's teams' jobs. They go above and beyond to give him don't be so tough on yourself. Because, as we know, a lot of this is a mental game. But, at the same time, he had a lot of weird things happen to him last year. We don't need to go into crazy depth about quarantining and all this stuff, but he didn't really have a great situation and a new environment and new players, and you could tell he's the kind of guy that probably needed to do it in Columbus more, where guys needed to play to him because you weren't playing with as big a name guys, and then when you start playing with guys like Nick Ehlers, or you play with Blake Wheeler, or you play with Mark Scheifele, they're expecting you to play around their game, not the other way around. So they need to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work, and how he can adjust. But one thing, whether or not he's going to be a centerman or a winger and all those kind of responsibilities for him upcoming here, but I do think he's in a better place mentally. I think he's more comfortable here. I think it's speaking of questions, you ask the guy, do you forget about last year? And, he kind of looks at us like, are you serious? What happened to me? So anyway, it's been a funny, again, it's not funny to fans who see a guy like Patrick Laine go the other way, and a guy that, was heralded as being some kind of massive driver up the middle and, not really come to fruition. I'm still in that group that, let's give him not this season. Let's let him start this season. See what he can do, see if that confidence, because the excuses are running out, right? I mean, you had an off season, you had all these things, you've worked with it, you've played with these guys. So not only are you're a new team, but you've had that last season to kind of, quote unquote, like you said, Huss, mulligan. Let's see what you can do now. And if what he's been saying to start this season, matches on the ice, I think we might just be laughing about this one. But at the same time, it won't be so funny if we see the same PLD that we saw last season.
All right, we cannot have a Jets conversation without talking about the backup goaltending position, which of course has sort of been legitimately a story. Eric Comrie sort of been handed this job, and you just said go and show that you can do it. I wouldn't say he's had a camp that's put a lot of fears to rest. And, he talked about that third goal on Edmonton as one that, he simply needs to have. Where are you at on all of this, and how do you think it plays out early into the season? I'd mentioned these, maybe we were off air, but I'll mention again for folks. A couple months ago, with the way things were shaking out, I sort of thinking that, this is going to be a huge, huge camp for Eric Comrie. He's going to need to come in. He's going to need to play well in these exhibition games and sort of really establish himself as that guy. Because at the beginning of the season is when you have the option to pick third goalies from other teams that are being sent on waivers that are available at that league minimum number. I can't really see that happening right now, and it's not like he's been horrible or anything like that. But needless to say, we talked a lot about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Forward-wise, he'll be the one everyone will be watching when things get going. But from a goaltending perspective, I would say the first 5 to 6 starts will be incredibly crucial for Eric Comrie, because the bottom line is this guy's going to get 20 starts a year. And, the Jets are going to need to keep their heads above water when they don't have their Vezina Trophy winner in between the pipes.
Yeah, and you're not asking him to do games that are work for his schedule. They're games that you get in. You play the second of back-to-back. You get in at 3 a.m. at that city. You're probably not sleeping because you're thinking about how you haven't played in whatever weeks, maybe in some cases months. So it is a tall order. I'm not going to say it's something that maybe we took for granted with Laurent Brossoit, because we didn't. He certainly had his ups and his downs throughout his tenure here in Winnipeg, but he was always, for the most part, consistent, or at least gave his team a chance to win when he was in between the pipes. Now, the thing about Eric Comrie is, and he, to his credit, he mentioned at the beginning of the year, just because I'm a nice guy doesn't mean I'm going to stay here. Just because I know this team that I've, they drafted me all, my connection to Winnipeg, I'm not going to be, promised anything. It wasn't like they brought him into the room and was like, hey, Eric, you know what, man, we really appreciate what you've done in this league. Whatever, we obviously like you. We're going to give you the season. He needs to prove his job every time he goes in between the pipes. So right now, I mean, it's hard to say. I'm with you. I don't think they pull the trigger on a goalie, at this point in time, as people figure out their backups and relegate their thirds and whatever through waivers. I don't think he's probably going to lose out on his job. But I will say this: I mean, he doesn't have a big resume. It was 8 starts, 3 wins in that group, and a subpar 900 save percentage. So if I'm there with fans. If you're concerned or curious on how this is going to play out, or believe that it's not going to play out in your favor, there really isn't anything to suggest that it will. Now, Eric Comrie's certainly done a lot. He's the kind of guy that you can trust, cares about his job, is putting in the work. He's talked about things that he's done differently this year compared to other years, including talking with a psychiatrist or psychologist to just kind of go over the mental sides of the game, maybe not put too much pressure on him. And I think he needs to know that he needs to have fun. I mean, fun comes with winning and doing an opportunity. But if you're just going to wake up every day with a pit in your stomach, you're going to be in trouble. So I think he's handling things the right way as far as what a goaltender needs to do. It's just more or less putting that on, putting that into games and collecting some stats, because right now the confidence level, whether it's through him or just the fan base in general, cannot be all that high when you don't really know that or proven that you can do it at this level. Again, a save percentage under 900, including in both of his preseason games so far this year, with some goals that, as you mentioned, Huss, that you probably like to have back. The thing though is, for him mentally, he seems like he's the kind of guy who can handle it, but I'm with you. I think this isn't a guy who's going to get all season to prove himself. If things start going sideways with him in net through the first 2, 3, 4, 5 starts, I think as an organization, you need to realize that, this isn't working, but let's let that play out first. Let's see how he does and see what, his first few games look like. But, as we've seen in, football with the backup quarterback, often, they're popular until they're not. So I do think this is also a cost-cutting thing. You mentioned there are guys out there probably at the minimum salary, but at this point, I don't know if you have enough information to tell you that this is going to go horribly wrong here in the near future. And therefore, I think if you're the Jets, you need to figure out what you got in Eric Carney and figure it out quick.
You got it. Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Hey, before we go, this is a non-Jet story. Did you see Robin Lehner's string of tweets over the course of the weekend?
Yeah, I did. Oh, yeah, I did.
So for folks that, maybe have missed this, I believe he's still trending on Twitter right now. Robin Lehner on, I guess, Saturday night fired out a string of tweets, sort of seemingly out of the blue, about NHL teams, the way they treat players, and the use of, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, prescription drugs that, aren't necessarily prescribed to handle things. And he mentioned benzodiazepines. I'm butchering that word big time. Bennies, I believe that they're more commonly called. He said, should that not be done by doctors or psychiatrists? Asking for a friend. This doesn't happen in Vegas, to be clear, but I know many other teams. I've been on other teams that do. Then he fires a scud at the Flyers, who he's never played for. Philadelphia Flyers, dinosaur coach, treating people robots, not human. Fire these dinosaurs. Fire #Vigno, first story. I got proof. Try to shake your way out of this one. And then follows that up with, they say Ambien is sleeping pill. It's funny that rehab told me that's why I didn't have REM sleep. 8 years, no REM sleep, great. But yeah, just sleeping pills. He goes on, you can check the entire feed. It's at Robin Lehner. But some pretty serious accusations. And the thing that's interesting, particularly to a Winnipeg audience, is, well, why in the world would he be saying this about the Flyers and Alain Vigneault never been there? Let's think about what Nolan Patrick went through over the last couple of years, who is now with the Vegas Golden Knights. Found it very interesting. The NHL said they reached out. They're going to talk to him about it. What did you make of this whole situation? And Robin Lehner is a guy that has a pretty interesting background. He's dealt with a lot off the ice, but you never hear an active player coming out with scuds like this, especially about other organizations that they're not playing for.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't, to me, it's a break in the culture. There's a reason why players don't, active players don't come out and say the thing that he's saying, is because more often than not, your career's done. You can't speak out against the Shield, or can't speak out against the league. I mean, what he's saying isn't all that shocking. I mean, did you think it was shocking? I mean, we've read lots of them. Look at some of the deaths by suicides in this.
Nothing that he said was shocking. It was the fact that it was
he's
said.
Saying it. Yeah,
and it, for a lot of the stuff, apparently it wasn't really to do with him. And of course, he's like, why in the world would he be saying this now? But as I said, he's got a past that's involved, mental health, substance abuse, really reviving his career to where he is right now with Vegas. And I'll tell you what, without Marc-Andre Fleury there as well, there's a lot on his shoulders going into this season outside of everything he's talking about off the ice.
Well, and he's a smart guy to, maybe he's using that leverage. using that leverage in his favor. Like, say something, or maybe he's just sick and tired of seeing that the NHL's a small community. So, whether he's throwing shade at Vigneault, who hasn't just been in Philadelphia, he's been other places, including junior hockey. So, he was there before and probably has a bit of a reputation. Now, I can't speak on any of that because I don't know, but, Robin Lehner seems to have a pretty clear idea. And for him to come out there, I think he's the voice of the player who's not being heard, right? He's the voice of the player who can't say no, right, to those drugs. I mean, look at what's happening with Jack Eichel in Buffalo, right? With the
well, he hit on that as well as a former member of the Sabres and said that he wasn't handled well.
And it's all about the idea of like what's better for the team. I know, I know earlier in Winnipeg, Mark Scheifele had his knee diagnosed not great. There was an issue here on that kind of stuff. So like it happens. I'm not comparing what happened with him and the Jets to, passing out candies on the flights for guys to go to bed. But like, I will say this is that like those kind of things happen. They're not always prescribed by a doctor. They're kind of, and like I was alluding to before, I mean, you look at some of the enforcers who have had, horrible fates in this league. I mean, you read back in their books or you read back, from people who have come out afterwards and they had, they're getting pills from this guy and they're getting pills from that guy. And usually guys that are getting pills, highly addictive pills, which I'll add, it's not like these guys are like, I can't, some of these guys need this to feel normal. They've got to that point, they'll go to different places. And if one of your teams, and I'm not trying to say trainers or whatever, are putting guys in because I don't know, those situations, but if you're able to find it from team officials that aren't doctors, that aren't taking your health into consideration, or really just doing whatever it is you ask them, that's problematic. And I think with Robin Lehner here is that, he's kind of guy who I wouldn't be surprised if his DMs were flooded. I mean, him threatening to come out every day and share a new story. I have no doubt in my mind he won't have an issue with content, with stories, with people coming forward. And I think the NHL should be put on notice for this. I think a lot of this time is, particularly in hockey, we've seen this, right? We've seen this in NFL. We've seen this in the NBA. We've seen players kind of recognize their value and the leverage they have and push forward to now what we see today in those leagues. NFL's got a bit of ways to go with the guaranteed contract, but the NBA, I mean, there was a long spell there where they just didn't know their value, and now they do, and now they can fight for things. So what's kind of characterized hockey forever and has been, a problem is that, no one speaks out, right? It's about the, the crest on the front, not the name on the back. And it's not just about being selfish in a lot of cases. It's about kind of speaking up for things that, that benefit you and others. And so I applaud Robin Lehner for stepping up and doing it. Now, some people might have an issue with whatever and blah, 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 with going against the league or speculating or things like that. I assure you, these guys aren't speculating. Like some of these stories, and he threatens it, are way worse than what you're getting. I think we're looking at some of the PG things here. And if this thing does, what I understand, the league's going to speak with them. It's great that the league's going to speak with them, but the league was going to speak with Akeem Alou 2 years ago and give him an idea of what was going on with, management in the NHL, including some in Winnipeg. And we haven't heard a damn thing on that report. So, this whole, lip service is great, but I again, give credit to Robert Lehner, who ultimately you might not enjoy the fashion in which he's dumping on the league you love, but it sure as hell is the best way of getting results. So if he keeps doing that and we actually see some positives come out of it through this, then I'm all for it. So keep going, keep tweeting.
Right on, dude. What do you got cooking up this weekend in the Free?
My weekly CFL column's coming out today where I take a look at the week, CFL rundown. There's just no shortage of drama in this league, so it's just been a lot of fun to put together. I'll have that out this afternoon.
Everywhere except Winnipeg.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of fun. And then Jets tomorrow and Bombers rest of the week. This is a big game. I know there's the Blue Bombers have a thing tomorrow they're going to be revealing those, Manitoba kind of inspired Indigenous logo. Those jerseys are going to be cool. They're going to be doing that at the game on Friday. So that's that's awesome. So just, lots of Bomber coverage, Jets, and beginning today with the CFL. So just busy, man.
Oh, this is a great chat, man. Thanks so much as always. Let's do it again soon.
Always a pleasure. Shout out to the comment section. You guys know I love you. Guys,
yeah. Oh, hey, speaking of the comment section, just before you leave, there's been a lot of comments on the new lighting that we have. Mm-hmm. And the whiteness of my head. You, as an experienced TV guy, viewing intermissions and whatnot, what's the do Do you do the makeup yourself? Do you have your own personal makeup kit, or do you have a team that makes you look as good as you do when you normally get on the tube?
Yeah, I'm very, very fortunate. You can't teach this, Huss. Like, this is just, I get out of bed, this is it, my hair is done, everything's great. I don't apply makeup. I have a bit of a natural tan to me to a certain degree, but I will say, if you're looking to, get help, ask those TV guys. Those TV guys know exactly what's going on. They're the ones that got the makeup kits and they powder, and they'll be able to tell you how to blend foundations and all those other things.
Yeah, well, we'll talk to Rennie. Rennie probably has the most experience. That's our guy. That's our go-to
we go to
guy.
The same hairstylist, so you obviously can trust him. So I mean, at the end of the day, ask Rennie, ask the guys who are on TV. But as far as I'm considered, if I could give you any advice, it's just you be you, man, and love yourself.
It's working so far. Hey, dude, thanks a lot. That was a heck of a lot of fun. Enjoy.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks a lot.
At Jeff K. Hamilton on Twitter, and of course, covering both the Jets and the Bombers in the pages of the Winnipeg Free Press. Remo, we'll get to that Sestito tweet in just a second. I do want to, speaking of the Bombers, give a big thanks to our official whiskey and spirit partner, Canadian Club. Friday at IG Field, I have a feeling there'll be quite a few CC and Gingers and CC and Cokes being enjoyed all around the stadium. Of course, Canadian Club is the official sponsor of the Bombers, and they're available everywhere at IG Field. And the great taste of CC is waiting for you at your local Manitoba Liquor Mart. And we've got to give congratulations to BA Split. BA was the first winner. We won the marble race on Friday, and we got a great I Love Rye package, including that great new co-branded Winnipeg Sports Talk Canadian Club t-shirt. I think we're going to do a hoodie for the home game on Friday. So most of you regulars know it well, but the marble race on Friday will have some great prizes, including some new merch we got, which we did in partnership with Canadian Club. So really looking forward to that, and thank them. And man, what a weekend. This weekend was so gorgeous, so much fun for sports fans, except for the Blue Jays, which we'll get to in a minute. But we're still holding on to summer around here in southern Manitoba all through this week. So take the kids, grab the girlfriend, get the crew out, pop down to one of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs and get another couple blizzards in you this summer. Of course, Nick and Nicky are at the DQ in Niverville, DQ Northgate, both with drive-thrus, the Dairy Queen over at Polo Park, and the DQ on St. Anne's, waiting for you with all those great ice cream treats. You can get a couple of to-go boxes of Dilly bars and the Buster bars to stick in the freezer for the winter. And of course, you can also check out those great Ultimate Grill burgers and more at your local Nick and Nicky DQ. And if you need a frozen ice cream cake, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll get a custom order for you, ready and waiting for you, quick and easy when you pop by any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. All right, we will get to the Cool Bet lines a little bit later on. We got a big Monday nighter. But Remo, pop back on. There was a great conversation with Hammer. A lot of the things that we talked about for the first 45 minutes or so of the program. The big win for the Bombers, the Jets heading into cut down day today and the cuts that happened. But you mentioned there was another tweet from Sestito on the Robin Lehner story that we were just talking about.
Sure, I'm just responding to comments in the chat about lighting. I don't know. I think maybe we'll turn down the brightness a couple. We're at 25%. I started at 50. It was too hot.
I have a glow, people. I have a glow. It's just, my excitement to be here talking about all our teams with you every day on Winnipeg Sports Talk. I'm not sure there's enough makeup that could possibly dull that when we get on the air every day at 1.
Yeah. Anyways, I'll bring up. We're talking about Robin Lehner, and you mentioned that he's trending right now, even though he had the tweet Saturday. Well, Tom Sestito put out a tweet today, 11:18 a.m. Good for Robin Lehner, standing up for the greater good. I can only speak for myself. The amount of vitamin T, brackets Toradol, and Ambien I was given is insane. As the NHL is getting a lot younger, these kids should know what they're walking into. And then Lehner responds, I understand people are scared. I'll be lying if I said I wasn't. I just want change and have it better for the young generation of talents in this league. NHLPA had a great talk with me yesterday. Hopefully it'll be with the NHL too. I believe there maybe have one more tweet from Sestito. Oh, here it is. I was given a bottle of Toradol. I was a fringe player in the NHL after taking. Then I felt amazing. Not a pain in my body. You're taught to believe that the doctors have your best interest, where that's not always the case. And no, they don't explain all the drugs they provide. And if you remember Toradol, Rick Westhead had a story on it last year on TSN. Very good feature. I remember Ryan Kessler was mentioned, where they inject it into you and you don't feel any pain. You feel like you can run through a wall. And I think it's very common, but they're not exactly told about, the long-term effects of it. And that was what Rick Westhead was getting into. So Tom Sestito, former NHLer, he was a bit of a tough guy, but responding to Lehner and saying, good for you for standing up. So we'll see what happens of this. I know Hamilton mentioned Akeem Alou making some allegations that the NHL said they were going to investigate, and he's still waiting to hear back from them. So we will see about this. But that was a bit of, I know Emily Kaplan wrote about that on ESPN as well. So it was pretty interesting. But I agree with you. It wasn't surprising, as we've heard about Toradol before use from Rick Westhead piece. But what was surprising that he was there not really caring about the consequences and saying, I'm going to say this and I'm going to stand up for the young talent in the league that may not know any better.
Yeah, this story's just getting going, really. I mean, it's not a new story. I mean, we've heard these sort of things, over the course of the years. But I think for the average fan, it was just thought of as part of the way things are done. And, no one really knew what this was and what some of the effects are. And if players are struggling because of it, it's something that certainly does have to be looked at. We've got a couple of other hockey stories we should get to. And we know the first three players on Team Canada for the Olympics. Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, and Alex Pietrangelo officially named as the first three members of the squad. Not really sure the process of why they had to name three today. Maybe it's for marketing purposes and whatnot, but absolutely no surprise whatsoever with those three individuals that were named.
Yeah, I think what this reinforces to me is that this is real. This is happening. NHL players at the Olympics, best on best. So no surprises. I mean, this is just a formality. I mean, you got the two best players, the best player in the world now, the best player of the last 10 years, and top defenseman, and Alex Pietrangelo. So we'll wait and see on the rest of the roster. But, I mean, I guess it's news. I guess there's more news that, hey, they have guys on the team, they've been told. But I'm starting to get ramped up now for, more roster announcements and speculation. We've talked about Mark Scheifele, how he's kind of on the bubble, or so we think, and how motivated he's going to be this year. But this is really exciting. And that's another side story of the NHL season, is who's going to be at the Olympics in February.
Yeah, well, no unvaccinated players are going to be at the Olympics. We certainly know that. And one of the unvaccinated players that had sort of been in the headlines over the past few weeks is back in it, and it's not for a good reason. Josh Archibald of the Edmonton Oilers, who was pretty outspoken that he wasn't in on getting the vaccine, and that was a big topic, obviously, in Edmonton. It's been announced that he's going to be going on to LTIR with myocarditis, which is a heart condition that he got because of COVID. Apparently, he had COVID. He was down and out. He came back to camp, and he just hasn't been feeling himself. And apparently now he's going on to LTIR. Now, there are some people that are somewhat skeptical about this news, just with the way that it's sort of happened, with the fact that he's unvaccinated, what the team's going to need to be going through with him on the roster, missing games and all of that. Some people's spidey senses, I guess, you can say are tingling. But as far as what we're being told right now, yeah, Josh Archibald dealing with the aftermath of COVID, somewhat of a cautionary tale. Certainly, I think you're in a better spot to not be hospitalized or not be dealing with really bad adverse health effects if you do have that. Regardless, though, doesn't look like he's going to be in the mix for the Oilers going forward. And big opportunity for a couple young guys, Brendan Perlini as well, who's had a good camp when it comes to the Oilers. And the other big news from hockey over the course of the weekend, Jimmy B finally got it done. I'll give him credit. I didn't know how he was going to get it done, but he did. Quinn Hughes is signed to a 6-year deal, $7.85 million for the Canucks top defenseman. And Elias Pettersson, this one might make Canuck fans a little more nervous, a 3-year deal at $7.35. That will take him to 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. He will get a qualifying offer. If he wants, he can take that qualifying offer, which will be in excess of $8 million, and walk straight to unrestricted free agency. And with that sort of leverage in a lot of ways, someone could argue that Elias Pettersson's going to be getting to unrestricted free agency a year early. But bottom line is that's huge for Vancouver, because if they didn't have those players when they dropped the puck on the season, they were going nowhere.
Yeah, and I mean, good for him for getting it done. I think you'd like the Paterson contract to be a bit longer. I think the Hughes one is very well done, but I think he approached it's pretty clear he approached the offseason the wrong way, signing, depth defensemen to long-term deals before, locking up your two, star forward and star defensemen. So I've been kind of critical of Jim Benning. They had that 1 year of success in the bubble, but for the most part, I think it's a lot of trading a future for Toronto win now on a team that's, I think, closer to a rebuild. But luckily for them, Huss, they're in the Pacific Division, which is horrible.
Stinks.
And it's absolutely brutal. So I think they do have a shot at the playoffs in there. I think getting Connor Garland OEL might help this year, but I think long term, I don't think it's looking good for Vancouver. But they got those guys signed, and we'll wait and see what happens with Paterson. But I think you have to be happy that it's done. Maybe the way you got there, not the best way, but for a couple of years they'll be in good shape. But we'll see how this OEL contract as well. They have him on the books for a lot of years.
Forever.
I mean, and that was the one thing. I think they would have had some more flexibility after this season, but they just dumped it all into OEL. I mean, they had those like Roussel and those other guys on who had 1 year left. I'm trying to remember all the bottom guys that they signed in that and sent away in that trade. But we'll see about Vancouver and what it means. I don't know what they're feeling about the team over there, what the reaction has been.
You got it. And Brady Tkachuk still unsigned in Ottawa. That is a big story for the team in the nation's capital. They need Brady Tkachuk to get signed, preferably to an 8-year deal, stick the C on his chest, and keep on moving forward after bottoming out the last couple seasons. Hey, we'll get to the NFL right now. I do want to thank Not AutoCorp for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Not AutoCorp's been with us from day number one. Trevor and the staff over there are absolutely incredible, and they are the place to go before you do anything. If you're thinking about a new car, why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? You know it well. Waverly and McGillivray. I got to tell you, if you do pop by there, tell them you want to check out the back. They have done an incredible renovation, which includes the new Winnipeg Car Lab, which officially started doing printing on the weekend. If you've got a business that needs a wrap for a vehicle or some special striping, tinting, rims, all of that, Winnipeg Car Lab open now at Not AutoCorp. You can follow them on all the socials over at Winnipeg Car Lab on Twitter, Instagram, and more. And again, thinking about those amazing Teslas, SUVs, and more as we get into the winter, now's the time to pop over at Not AutoCorp. It's at Waverly and McGillivray, or visit them at not.ca. All right, I'm seeing in the chat, was it BA that just asked how Urban Meyer's weekend is going? Yeah, we should probably save that Urban story for the end. But let's get to the football first. Actually, let's get to the Blue Jays first, Remo. I knew we couldn't be packed with too many guests today because there were so many things to happen. We went in. I know a few of you jumped on that cool bet prop, plus 130 for the Jays to sweep going into the playoffs. Well, the good news was that cash, they did get the sweep. They did what they needed to do, but unfortunately, they didn't get enough help. And I know I was essentially locked in on 4 NFL games in front of me. I knew the Jays were, winning, running away, and it was just a matter of being on the Score app all afternoon, seeing what was happening between the Red Sox and the Nats and the Yankees and the Rays. The Yankees were getting one hit into the 9th inning, and it seemed like they were going to be swept by Tampa and would have gone into that tiebreaker game with the Blue Jays. Unfortunately, Aaron Judge walked one off in the 9th inning, so the Yankees got it done. And the Red Sox came back from a 4-run deficit. They tied it, went ahead in the 9th. They win 7-5. And the Blue Jays, with 91 wins on the season, will miss a wild card tiebreaker by 1 game. It'll be the Sox and the Yankees going at it in the AL wild card. And I mean, Remo, I'm interested in your thoughts. I mean, if you're a Jays fan right now, you're of course excited about the future and the young core of this team. But at the same time, you have to feel like there was an incredible opportunity to do something special this year that fell that much short.
Yeah, I think it's a real missed opportunity for the Blue Jays. You just look at their run differential. This was not just a playoff team, but they had potential to go all the way and win everything. And I don't know if I guess when you have that big of a run differential and you're falling short of the playoffs, I mean, it's just a one game here. I mean, they're one game short. So think of, past games that could have won. I mean, it was all the Yankees series last week was their biggest opportunity. Weren't able to make it work. I know people are mentioning the Twins series, or you go into early in the season when, the bullpen wasn't fully solidified and they took their time with that. But, you were watching the games. How close it was. The Red Sox had to have a comeback in the ninth inning yesterday. The Yankees had a Judge walk off. They just needed one of those teams to lose. Yeah, to lose, and they couldn't. I know Seattle made it close as well. They fell.
Tell you what, everyone in the AL happy that the Jays aren't there. Well, because that is a team that, as presently put together, would scare the hell out of any team going up in a series, even in a one-game playoff for the wild card. There'll be a lot of questions about Charlie Montoya going into this offseason, into next year. I mean, I think you can certainly make, look back at some of the games that got away early on in the season and think about the manager's role in that. Although, then you look at a team that had 4 100 RBI players, Vladimir Guerrero with the historic season for a player of his age, hitting 48 home runs. And Marcus Semien, who I know the thought of him leaving is freaking out a lot of Jays fans after setting an all-time record for most bombs by a second baseman going into unrestricted free agency. He for his part said, why wouldn't I want to stick around and be a part of this? This is the most fun, exciting team I've been with in my career. But again, you got to be able to cut the check. So whether it's Robbie Ray, it'll be really too bad if Robbie Ray's last start was the one against the Yankees that went the way that it did in a game that inevitably, was part of costing them an opportunity to play for it. But the bottom line is this team is young, they're stacked, and they're going to be there next year. And I would imagine that once odds open up for next year after the playoffs, the Jays will probably be amongst maybe the top 5 favorites to win the World Series next year. One thing I'll say as a fan, though, Reem, is I'm going to miss the Jays. They were such a treat to watch night in and night out. And part of it is just having that core group of young, exciting players that honestly had about as much fun as any team in any sport I've seen, with the jackets after the home runs and just the way they sort of came together. Be a disappointing night last night for the Blue Jays, falling that close but just short. But I'll tell you what, if you're a Jays fan, as upset as you are that it didn't happen this year, I can't remember any point that there was more optimistic for where this team is going and what they might be able to accomplish in the next few years.
Yeah, I agree with you. The future is definitely bright for the Jays, but I mean, when you have a roster that has the 4th best, run differential, and you miss the playoffs by a game, I think it is still disappointing. But going forward, I mean, you have Guerrero Jr., who might be the MVP. George Springer, I mean, if he was healthy for majority of the season, what could have been? Bo Bichette, emerging star, and then you have the pitching. I mean, Ryu kind of struggled near at the end, but he can be good. They got Jose Barrios for another year, and Alek Manoah had the breakout season. So I agree with you. They do have a lot of talent. We'll wait and see what happens now with Robbie Ray and Marcus Semien, who had another career year. It seemed like everything was coming together for them to make a deep run. They didn't have. I think the bullpen definitely hurt them early on, and the lack of a proven closer for sure, and reliable options at the back end, but. I think it definitely stings, it stings, missing the playoffs by a game, but I agree with you that they will be high up on the favorites list for next season. But, we still have, the playoffs to get going.
How about the Dodgers winning 106 games and having to play in the wild card game?
That's like how San Francisco, I mean, you talk about, baseball, it's got this, you can spend $200 million and get in the playoffs, blah, blah. I mean, look at the Dodgers, 106 games, and somehow, I don't know how San Francisco keeps doing this. I mean, they won 3 World Series in the 2010s. I still don't know how they did it. Look at their rosters. Or Madison Bumgarner.
Remember who the 2 World Series favorites were going into this year? It was the Dodgers.
And the Padres.
Yeah. You want to talk about bottoming out? They finished 79 and 83, 4 games under 500. And it seemed like that team completely imploded from within. They spent all that money. They signed Tatis to the record contract. They brought in Darvish. just absolutely unthinkable that they are where they are right now. And we got to give some credit to the St. Louis Cardinals, who looked like they were just another one of these run-of-the-mill teams that were going to finish a game or two up or above 500. And then they rattled off 17 wins in a row in the last 3 weeks to get into that wild card spot. Adam Wainwright will be on the hill. They'll take on the Dodgers, and it'll be the Yankees and the Red Sox in the AL wild card.
Adam Wainwright, first of all, I forgot he was in the league still, like halfway through the year. His season has been absolutely incredible. 39 years old, 17-7, 3.05 ERA, 200 innings. The guy is still a horse. I thought he was done a couple of years ago.
Total Iron Man.
2017, I mean, he had a 5.11 ERA, but it's just gone. For somehow, from age 35 to 39, his ERA has declined every single year, and there he is carrying the Cards into the playoffs. That's incredible to me. I like the Cards. I like Goldschmidt. I like Arenado. I had Tommy Edman on some fantasy teams. I got some good players. I got the Canadian Tyler O'Neill. I like St. Louis, but I don't know, the Dodgers. That's gonna be that'll be good. I think the Dodgers are gonna take it though. The Dodgers are too stacked.
Yeah, Schickster asking Vladdy MVP or Shohei. I mean, I think it's Ohtani. Ohtani had, a hit unprecedented season. I think I was going to say historic. It's more than historic. He's done something that no one has done even remotely since Babe Ruth. And I think you can look at the numbers and say that he was even better, both hitting and from a pitching perspective, than maybe even in Babe's best years. So I think Ohtani's going to get it. Sucks for Vlad because any other season he would be a near unanimous winner for the MVP. All right, we've only got about 5 minutes left. I want to get to the cool bet lines. We'll probably spend more time tomorrow with a full recap of the weekend in the National Football League, but there was no way we could talk about do the show today without mentioning certainly the big game last night, and that was Tom Brady's return to New England. Remo, the game lived up to the billing. I think a lot of people, I wasn't one of them, expected Tom Brady and the Bucs to go in there and embarrass the New England Patriots. And I told you on Friday, Bill Belichick's going to have a say in this too. I thought Bill Belichick had a brilliant defensive plan. I think the weather, certainly conspired to maybe hold things down offensively a little bit. Leaving away the game, even with Nick Folk doinking it from 56 with the final minute to go, kind of surprised they didn't try and get a little bit more yardage to make it a more makeable field goal, but it was 4th and 3. So, Belichick made the call. It didn't work. But it was Mac Jones' performance in a game like that with all the pressure, with all the spotlight. I can't wait to see what the ratings are coming out. Shout out to Mac Jones for a great game and the Patriots for at least covering the spread, which was 7. And you know what side I was on. But that was a game a lot of people remember for a long time. For Brady's perspective, I think happy just to get it behind him, get the win, and get back to Tampa as they are now 3-1 on the season.
Yeah, Tom Brady, an absolute legend, and there's so much hype going into this game. How could it possibly live up to it? I think it was a bit of a sloppy, first half. As you said, the weather played into it. But the end, it went down to the wire. I can't believe, Mac Jones led that Patriots down to even have a shot. I thought once Tampa, took the lead there with that field goal, it was done. But it was a great game, and a lot being said about Belichick and Brady. And again, it was a great end to the week, to finally get this one. And how about Tom Brady again setting the touchdown record in New England, passing Drew Brees. The schedule makers, they well done on that one, hey?
And they did absolutely nothing for it. I think they just put a little thing. Congratulations, Tom. They added a yard during a timeout that made it the record. I'm sure they just took the ball off, and that was about it. I will give a little plug for the Lock Shop tomorrow. There'll be some victory laps made on the Lock Shop tomorrow because we need the Chargers to go 5-0 in our picks against the spread. Dusty and I went head-to-head on the Bucs game, so I'll very much look forward to recapping that game tomorrow. But I see Kabilis in the chat. He's on fire, as all Cardinals fans are. Man, that might have been the most shocking game of the entire weekend. Arizona going into SoFi to play the undefeated Rams in a matchup of 3-0 teams in the same division. And it was Cliff Kingsbury's boys, Kyler Murray and the gang running all over the Rams. I'll tell you what, I wasn't really betting on that game, but I certainly didn't see that coming. I thought the Rams would win. The Cardinals in that division were the longest shot to win out of the 4 teams. And right now, they are absolutely in the driver's seat, especially after the Niners had a great start and ended up losing to the Seattle Seahawks, who Seahawks get the record to 2-2.
Yeah, Kyler Murray, he's good. He is very, very good. I know he was having an MVP caliber season last year till he got hurt, and he picked up where he left off. I thought this was going to be...
Streveler's Arizona Cardinals. You're right, Travis.
I thought, I thought the Rams were Super Bowl contenders as well. Matt Stafford has looked excellent through the first couple of games in this in the new offense with Sean McVay. Having a competent organization and competent head coach behind you will do wonders. But, the Cardinals, A.J. Green looks rejuvenated. Hopkins, they got 2 solid running backs. The offense is rolling there in Arizona. So, yeah, watch out for them at 4-0.
Well, speaking of offenses are rolling, Chiefs offenses are rolling. The defense is still very problematic and gives me, moments in the night going, what can they do to improve it? But I'll tell you what, if you play the way the Chiefs did offensively yesterday, you can handle a defense that gives up 30 points a game. Patrick Mahomes, 5 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, absolute monster game, nearly 200 yards, 3 touchdowns yesterday. They get a big win. Cowboys going to 3-1 with the win over the Panthers, who took their first loss. Green Bay with a big win over Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh 1-3, going like 2 games back of all the other teams in the AFC North. And of course, we have a big Monday nighter, the undefeated Oakland Raiders taking on the LA Chargers. I almost always screw that up. Let's take a quick look at CoolBet for our lines for tonight's game. And it's a 3-point spread. Pretty simple. 3 points for home field. They think this is pretty much a pick 'em. I love the Chargers in this game. They are 3-point favorites right now, minus 164 on the money line. Raiders, for their part, +3 and getting more than plus money, plus 101 for 3-point spread. That is that's your big game of the night. No baseball, of course. We thought we might have a tiebreaker game. That's not happening. So all eyes are going to be on Monday Night Football tonight. However, we do have CFL lines. They're just out. Toronto, 8-point favorites over Ottawa. And how about this? The Bombers finally getting the respect from the bookmakers after they keep on killing them every week. Bombers opening up 13-point favorites over the Elks at home for Friday night's game, Reem.
Yeah, 90s night at the IG Field. I'm looking forward to that. Bombers, finally being favorites. That seems high. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see Edmonton's, what their lineup is. Trevor Harris, is he injured? Is he healthy? I forget. They keep taking him off and putting him on. So I think we'll wait and see about that. James Wilder did run over them in the first half last game, but they couldn't keep it up in the second half. So we'll see about that. This Toronto-Ottawa one I find interesting. Is Caleb playing quarterback for Ottawa still? He looked good. He looked good in their win. But yeah, there is a Wednesday.
He's 1-0 in the CFL.
There is a Wednesday game this week, so I have to make sure how it affects our DraftKings.
Oh, yes. You can check that out. We'll let people know tomorrow. But right now, I'd never lay that sort of points. Well, rarely. We did take the Bills at 16.5 yesterday, but they won 40-0. But I'll tell you what, the Bombers have just been winning for us every single week and covering every time out. So we may have to hold the nose with the line and still take them minus 13 for Friday night's game. Again, if you want to bet over at CoolBet and you haven't done it before, use the promo code WST. You'll get a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. You can get in on the game tonight. And there's also a free contest for basically an NFL pick'em game that is great. They've got great prizes each and every week, totally free to play. Check that over in the promo section over at CoolBet as well. All right, tomorrow on the show, Kevin O is going to join us. We'll have much more on the Jets, and we'll talk to him about that big weekend for the Ice kicking it off. Bombers will be back at practice, getting ready for Edmonton on Friday. We'll have more from there. And the Jets back on the ice, getting ready for their final 2 preseason games, including the final home one, which is Wednesday at Canada Life Center. Once again, a big thanks to all of our sponsors, including our newest official welcome to Culligan Water. Great to have you on board with Winnipeg Sports Talk. Our friends at Not Auto Corp, best in the biz. Why not over at Waverly and McGillivray? Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery on Logan Avenue. You can find them at manitobabattery.com. The boys at the Superstore, Royal Sports, you know where that is, 750 Pembina Highway. Our great friends at Princess Auto, so good to have Princess Auto on board with us as well. The great taste of Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, great spot for Monday Night Football. Of course, Canadian Club, you can get a nice CC at Boston Pizza while you're watching the game tonight. And of course, we'll have a few of those at the game on Friday. And the Nick and Nikki TQ group, enjoy spring. It's spring, summer right now. It feels like summer. It's technically fall. That doesn't matter. It's still blizzard season. And of course, Cool Bet Canada. Big thanks to Jeff Hamilton for joining us and the great crew in the YouTube chat. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the red subscribe button and hit that thumbs up before you go. We'd love to get to 200 on the day. A great show. Thanks so much. We're just getting going for the week, though, folks. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock right here on YouTube and in the afternoon in your podcast feed for another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Enjoy the Monday Nighter tonight.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.